He walks into the cafe, and the air seems to change. Not rushing, not dragging his feet, just moving with the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to prove anything. His jacket isn't for warmth, but for the way it shapes his shoulders. His stubble is trimmed just enough to sit between rugged and refined. And that faint smile, the kind you feel before you even notice it, pulls women in before they've decided if they should let it. Within minutes, the barista is leaning in closer than she needs to. 2 phone numbers appear without him asking, and 3 more women are already wondering why their walls feel weaker than they did a moment ago. You watch with something between awe and confusion. The elegance with which he navigates the invisible currents between men and women feels like a language you've never learned. While you struggle to interpret the first line of the book, he reads the last page and smiles knowingly. His timing is flawless, his attention precise, his charm effortless. You can't help but wonder, how does he do it? How does he hold that balance between interest and detachment, intimacy and distance, without losing his footing? The truth, the one people rarely speak aloud, is that what you're seeing isn't natural grace, it's crafted resilience. That man wasn't born fluent in female psychology. He likely began his journey on the opposite shore, as the man who gave too much, too soon, who loved without calculation, who believed without question. The confidence you see today is not the absence of wounds, but the result of them. It is scar tissue that has learned to move like muscle. Men like this have endured a refining fire. They have been where emotion was met with absence, where loyalty was met with betrayal, where romantic sincerity was mistaken for weakness. And because they could not stand the thought of drowning the same way twice, they adapted. The smoothness you mistake for inborn charisma is the invisible product of 1,000 quiet corrections, of mistakes absorbed and translated into instinct. It's like watching a pianist play a piece that once tormented them. The music seems to pour from somewhere deep within, yet it is built on years of repetition, wrong notes, broken rhythms, and the stubborn return to the bench after wanting to walk away forever. When skill becomes unconscious, it hides its own birth. But the origin of such mastery is rarely voluntary. These men are not born strategists. They are forged. The alternative to growth was too painful to bear, and so they studied, they experimented, they hardened. Somewhere in his past, the man in the cafe lived through his final betrayal, that one devastating moment that doesn't just break the heart, but dismantles the architecture of belief itself. A love lost not quietly, but with the brutal force of truth colliding with illusion. The kind of loss that forces a man to choose between clinging to the dream or learning the rules of reality. And so, the laboratory phase begins. He approaches women not with the trembling hope of being chosen, but with the curiosity of a scientist gathering data. No longer desperate to prove himself, he becomes absorbed in understanding the strange, beautiful, contradictory nature of attraction. He notices patterns, how playful irreverence often stirs desire more than reverent devotion, how a little absence breeds more longing than constant presence, how mystery keeps doors open that full disclosure might close. In this transformation, sincerity does not disappear, it is repurposed. He no longer treats his kindness as currency to purchase affection. Instead, he keeps it in reserve, knowing its worth is amplified when given sparingly, with discernment. What looks like confidence to the outside world is simply the absence of dependence. This is the work of psychological scar tissue. Like its physical counterpart, it is less supple, less sensitive, but it is stronger. It shields him from the wounds that once pierced him with ease. The same vulnerability that once left him exposed now exists behind quiet fortifications. Women perceive this as self-assurance, a man not easily moved or shaken, and it is this very stability that draws them in. In time, he develops something rarer still, what could be called emotional archaeology. He digs beneath the surface of words, gestures, and smiles, unearthing the truths buried there. He can tell when a laugh is genuine and when it's armor, when a compliment hides an agenda, when a question is really a test. And he knows this because he once took every word, every gesture, at face value and suffered for it. From these excavations emerges his most paradoxical skill, strategic indifference. He learns the delicate art of caring enough to be present, but not enough to be possessed. He gives attention without surrendering his balance, affection without forfeiting his freedom. It is not coldness, it is calibrated warmth. And because this calibration was learned through loss, it is authentic, not feigned. This equilibrium changes everything. The less he needs validation, the more validation comes. The less he seeks approval, the more freely it is offered. Women respond because, instinctively, they sense that his interest is a choice, not a need. And yet, this very system that protects him can also become a prison. The same walls that keep out harm can keep out healing. Many men never dismantle them, drifting from one enticing but shallow connection to the next, admired but never known. Others, rarer, learn the discipline of selective vulnerability, lowering the drawbridge only for those who have proven their intentions through patience, loyalty, and truth. Such men carry a paradox that women can feel before they can name it: accessible depth. They can converse about loss without bitterness, about love without naivety. They offer the weight of experience without the burden of dependence. And to women weary of being either idolized or ignored, this is intoxicating. Over years of trial, they assemble a private map, the pattern recognition matrix, that allows them to see the shape of a relationship before it fully forms. They recognize the rebound, the validation seeker, the game player, the one who wants the man, but not the man's life. They can pivot, withdraw, or advance with an efficiency that looks like instinct, but is simply the accumulation of memory and pain, reworked into foresight. And with this foresight comes the final irony. The more skilled they become at protecting themselves, the harder it becomes to experience the unguarded intimacy they once longed for. It is the quiet tax of mastery that every advantage carries its own shadow. Still, for those who can balance the fortress and the open door, there lies a rare reward, a love entered into not from need, but from choice. A love where both stand not as saviors or dependents, but as whole beings, each capable of walking away, yet each choosing to stay. And perhaps that is the lesson for every man watching from the corner of the cafe, that no one is born fluent in this language. Every master was once a beginner. Every confident man was once a boy who misread the room, who loved too quickly, who lost more than he thought he could bear, and decided to learn from it rather than be defined by it. He knows now that charm is not a performance, but a rhythm, and rhythm is born from listening. Listening not just to words, but to pauses, to the way someone breathes when they're holding back, to the subtle tightening around the eyes when interest fades, or the way shoulders shift when curiosity blooms. Years ago, he would have rushed to fill those silences, terrified they signaled disinterest. Now, he lets them linger, because he's learned that silence can draw more than words ever could. The boy who once built his worth on a single woman's approval has grown into a man whose worth is untouched by the weather of another's emotions. This is not arrogance, it is survival. He has stood in the storm of rejection and learned that his foundation must be made of stone, not sand. It is this inner stability that allows him to move through the unpredictable climate of attraction without losing his shape. In his earlier life, every interaction was a wager, his confidence placed entirely in the hands of how she responded. A delayed message could unravel him. A lack of enthusiasm could send him spiraling. Now, he understands that desire has tides. It swells, recedes, returns, and sometimes disappears without warning. He no longer fights the ocean, he surfs it. This ability to flow with emotional currents rather than drown in them makes him appear almost untouchable. Women who meet him sense it immediately, that he will not collapse if they pull away, nor will he chase if they turn cold. This is not because he lacks feeling, but because his feelings no longer dictate his movements. He moves by choice, not compulsion. But perhaps his most dangerous quality, the one that makes him unforgettable, is the way he can give a woman the rare sensation of being understood without being possessed. He will look at her in a way that makes her feel as if he sees what others miss. The fear behind the confidence, the longing beneath playfulness, and yet she knows he will not try to claim her. This combination of intimacy and freedom is intoxicating because it is so rarely offered together. It is here that the paradox sharpens. His depth, born from pain, draws people in. His self-protection, born from the same pain, keeps them at a measured distance. Most men err on one side, too open and therefore easily broken, or too guarded and therefore impenetrable. He walks the narrow bridge between, and it is this balance that makes him magnetic. Still, there are nights when he feels the cost, when the armor he wears so naturally begins to feel heavy, when he wonders whether the very instincts that save him from heartbreak are also keeping him from the kind of love that could redeem all his losses. He knows that his system, his defensive mastery, was built for survival, not joy. And survival, though powerful, can become a prison if never dismantled. Some men never dismantle it. They become legends in the stories other people tell about them. The man who could have any woman but never stayed with one. The charmer who seemed to know every secret but kept his own locked away. They move through lives like passing storms, remembered for the way they stirred the air, not for the gardens they helped grow. But others, the rare few, learn the art of selective vulnerability. They open the gates not to anyone who knocks, but to those who arrive with quiet consistency instead of noise, whose presence feels like peace rather than conquest. For them, lowering the drawbridge is no longer a risk to their survival, but a choice made from strength. This is the final stage of transformation, when the scar tissue remains, but the man is no longer ruled by it. When he can choose to let someone close, knowing he could survive their absence if they left, but hoping they won't. Here, attraction is no longer the game. It is the doorway to something rarer, connection without dependence, freedom without isolation. And yet, even at this stage, the habits of his earlier life whisper in the background. He still scans the room without meaning to, still reads micro-expressions like text on a page, still weighs words against tone and body language in fractions of a second. Old instincts die slowly, especially when they've kept you alive. But now, instead of letting them dictate his every move, he uses them as quiet guides, tools, not masters. Women who meet him at this stage often describe him in ways that seem contradictory. He's intense yet relaxed, open yet contained, serious yet playful. He can speak with the weight of a man who has lived through heartbreak, then laugh with the lightness of someone untouched by bitterness. This duality is no act. It is the natural result of living on both sides of love's cruelty and learning to walk away with pieces of both worlds.